And we're live. We are live with another week of the Bright Girls in Business podcast. And I'm so excited today, as I always am. But I have not been on here for about 2 weeks now. So I got a little bit more energy and I'm ready to have some good conversation today with my guest, Miss Demetra Bradley. Thank you for joining us, Miss Demetra. So let me tell y'all a little bit about her, because we got a unique situation and a unique story today, a very unique story to tell today. Yeah, look at her rubbing her hands. I'm really excited. So Demetra Bradley is an established empowerment speaker, author, and owner of Foxy Defense and Protection. Through her work, she has interacted with countless women in domestic violence and sexual assault situations. She realized the lack of resources for women to learn how to physically, mentally, and emotionally protect themselves. So this prompted her to open Foxy Defense and Protection, whose mission is to educate and train women to protect themselves by equipping them with the mental and physical tools necessary to increase their confidence and self-esteem. As a result, she became a self-defense instructor and teaches women-only self-defense classes. She also speaks about the steps that are important and necessary to being ready for an attack by being prepared and not scared. And so thank you again for coming on to the show today.
You're welcome.
Yes, so I'm ready to kind of dig into this topic for a couple different reasons. One, we're coming to the end of September, and we know that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I know that you're probably going to be doing some things surrounding that, just pushing the message. But also because when I learned of you and your business model and everything like that, it is very unique. It's very different. I don't see a whole lot of people doing what you do. So when I met you, I think we met maybe about 2 years ago. It was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I liked all your little gadgets and stuff. I like self-defense tools.
Yep.
So I have stuff, I keep in my purse and I keep on my person.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to talk to you just because I thought it was unique. And I think that more women need to understand how to prepare ourselves, because whether we realize it or not, we're always somehow under attack, whether, like you said, it's mentally or physically. So it says in your work, you experienced this a lot. So tell me a little bit about your work and what motivated you to launch this business.
Okay, so I am a full-time police officer. And so that was where I had a lot of my encounters with the women that I mentioned in the statement, but women that just didn't know how to protect themselves. And it really started bothering me, like, oh my gosh, okay, one call after the next call after the next call, I could see like they were struggling mentally, not just physically, but mentally in getting away from those situations. And after having just one-on-one conversations or taking them to a shelter and having conversations with the people that work at the shelter and then myself, I could see that they just didn't know. They didn't know that things were easily attainable. They didn't know resources that were at their fingertips, and they just didn't have that confidence to find out what resources were available. So once you get past that mental part, then you can work on the physical. And I noticed that as well as women just didn't, oh, it's the man, they're stronger than me, they're bigger than me, and all these things that we hear from movies and TV shows, that after a while you start listening and reminiscing on those types of things, you start to believe it. And so I wanted to be able to defeat those stereotypes, if you want to say, of showing women that it's easier said than done. And let me show you how you can get out of this situation. Let me show you how to change your mind mentally so you can believe that you have what it takes physically to protect yourself and your kids. Because most of the time it's not just about them, it's about the offspring. And they want to make sure that their children are good, so they stay in these relationships where the man is the sole provider for the family, and they think that they have to depend on him for everything. And it's 2021, honey. We don't. We
Yeah.
don't. There are so many resources available that even on my website, I keep a tab that says resources. So even if you don't want to take a self-defense class, you can look at the resources and see, okay, I need help financially. I need help legally. I need help um, finding a place to stay or something like that. So it's on the website just like that, because not everybody wants to go hands on, or not everybody is in a domestic violence situation where it's physical. So
Yeah.
there are other ways that you can be abused, which would be mental, emotional, financial, and those sorts of things. So yeah, that's what prompted me to start my business. Also, I noticed that not necessarily women of color, but I guess that was the neighborhood I worked in the most. So I saw Black and brown women the most that needed help, and they were in the neighborhoods where money is a problem. So I didn't want to open a business in a suburb of Fort Worth or a suburb of Dallas and not be able to reach the people that need it the most. So I wanted to make sure I kept my classes small and in the inner city, and keep the price feasible where people can feel like, okay, I have enough money to take this class. Money is not going to be an issue for me to learn how to protect myself.
I like that. Something that I really appreciate you saying and really pulling out is not just the physical, let me help you fight, let me give you, a stun gun or something, and you get out here and you're ill-equipped, because
Yeah.
you could turn around and one of those weapons be turned around on you, right? But really focusing on the mental state, because that's where it all begins.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it all kind of, you can win or lose the battle mentally. If you don't feel
Absolutely.
like you're empowered,
Yep. Yep.
if you don't feel like
Exactly.
you're
So
empowered.
and that's one of my favorite quotes is, if you believe that you can, you will. And if you believe that you can't, you won't. So
Yeah.
if you believe that you can come out of that situation better, then you will. If you believe that, okay, he's gonna defeat me and overpower me, then he will. So it's all about the mindset. Everything starts in the mind. If we can get our minds right, then we'll be able to do a whole bunch of things physically, because our minds are already set.
Yeah. So you also mentioned the part about just the cultural differences that you see in the communities that you serve as with your full-time job. Um, and what I'm most interested in kind of diving into there is a conversation that I've been having and seeing online, just talking about male female relationships in different cultural settings. So, the difference between how Black men and women interact with each other as
Mhm.
opposed to Hispanic men and women. And I know a lot of this stuff is it can be stereotypical, if you will, but some of this stuff is just cultural as well.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wanted to lean into that part, because I know, and I'll speak from our perspective as African American women. I know
Mhm.
there's a narrative that we don't rely on our men, or we don't need our men, or we feel marginalized by our men in so many ways. And do you find that that shows up in some of those domestic situations that you've had to be called out on, or?
A lot of the ones that I've run into are more brown than Black. And so when Hispanic women come over here, or you have Indian, Haitian, just other cultures that are in our communities, those are the ones that I see the most, because number one, they're scared to call police.
Mm,
So I don't know what happens in other countries, but I can only assume that police are corrupt, and that they don't have relationships to where they can trust them. So I'm not naive, but I understand it's not the same here in America that it would be somewhere else. So
mm,
even in those types of situations, the men won't even speak to me as a female officer.
wow.
Hmm. Exactly. So they're like, Is there somebody else that I can speak with? No.
Really? So they just
Yeah.
won't acknowledge you at all?
Nope. Nope. Exactly. And
Even though, wow,
we
okay.
end up having to call out male officers in order for them to cooperate, because we want the women to be able to have resources to get help, but the men won't speak directly to us. They will speak to another male and let the male speak to the female and that type of stuff. But once they pull them out the house, then me as a female officer can talk to the woman.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's,
Yes.
I mean,
Crazy.
I understand, not saying that I agree with what you're saying. I understand how that can be perpetuated, and I understand how that could happen,
Yeah.
simply because a lot of other countries, I mean, America is a patriarchal society.
Yeah.
And our police, I know you are a police officer, so please excuse me as I say this, but our police can be corrupt too.
Oh,
And they'll
absolutely. I
create
completely agree.
trustworthy situations too. So
Yeah.
I understand in some countries where there's not as many maybe checks and balances, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like pay off the police to do certain
Yep.
things or whatever the case, where a lot of that stuff can happen. And even, I've seen this a lot. I have some friends who are in law enforcement, and they unfortunately get away with a lot of, because they know each other, right? And so women don't always feel as safe or protected in those situations to speak up.
Exactly. And that even happens internally within police departments, because, of course, men outrank women by number in departments. And some women may feel like, okay, if I don't do what they say, I may not get promoted, or I may not get the spot that I want in this unit, or something like that. And I've heard stories, I mean, from different female officers that I'm friends with just across different departments. Because we have conferences and all that type of stuff. So we all meet up and talk about differences or similarities within our departments and what we can do to help change that culture. But it happens, it does. And we just have to be strong enough and have the mindset physically and mentally to want to change it. So my original reason for becoming a police officer was because I saw police officers doing, I don't want to say bad things, but in my eyes, it was bad. My perception of the outside community member looking at what they were doing was bad. It was taking people to jail that I thought, that so and so up the street, they ain't never did nothing to me. They seem like pretty cool to me. 10 years later, found out that they had this drug ring and all this stuff going on inside the house. But from what I saw, I was like, man, they doing the wrong thing. They shouldn't be as rough as they are with these people and blah blah blah. So I said, well, what better way for me to change that than to change it from the inside out? So that's what made me want to become a police officer, was to come in, get in the system on this side, and figure out what is needed to change actions and all of that from the outside. Because I'm still an officer in the community that I grew up in. Because if I can't affect change there, why would I go somewhere else and try to affect change? I need to affect change right at home.
Yeah. I like that. I can appreciate that viewpoint, because not many people are willing to, take on that task, or to be so passionate about that cause. And it seems like you're that type of person where you see a gap and you want to hop in and you want to fill it, and you really want to help people. And so I can appreciate that, just about your approach and you thinking in that way, because I can only imagine the layers that you experience in your day-to-day work, not just as a police officer. Okay, that's one layer. Then you have a woman police officer. That's another layer. Then you have that you're an African American police officer and an African American woman police officer. Like all these different things that make up you, that the only one you can possibly disconnect from in this life is the police officer role. But just being able to see things from a different lens, and then be able to see the gap and try to fill that, is I think is notable. So
Yeah, and that's what helps as well with my business, is being able to have the perspective from a woman, from a Black woman, from a Black woman that's a police officer. So just those different perspectives help me teach the class in a different manner where I can connect better with the women. And then it's not because I've been through something. Because, you hear a lot of that sometimes where people are like, oh, I was in this situation and that's what prompted me to have this job or do this. And that's not the same for me. That wasn't my reason. So most people, or some people that I have talked to when I was thinking about starting the business, was like, you're not going to be able to relate to the women. Yes, I can, because you haven't been through it. That doesn't mean that I can't relate to them because I haven't been through it. So that was really weird. It was an eye opener for me. But I've been able to find ways to connect with them with those experiences that I've had on this side, and shown them how I've had the training as a police officer, and I did some civilian training as well on how to physically learn how to get out of certain situations, because these women aren't wanting to learn how to be a cop. So that's not the experience that I need to bring to them. They want to know, how do I get out of this situation and save my life and the life of my children? So
Right.
that's the perspective and what I have to bring in the classroom to them.
So here's a question that I have, because we talked about the mental aspect of this thing. And I'm really, that's just ringing out to me, because to me, that just means the most out of anything. I know what it looks like to be in emotionally and even physically damaging relationships and things like that. And it is a mindset, because so many times we see women in these situations, and the first thing that people want to say is, why won't she just leave? That's the first thing people say. It's a judgment call more than an empathy call, to say, what's going on here where she feels like she can't leave, and how can I support her?
Exactly.
So on the flip side of that, how do we not be reactive but be proactive as women who may not be in a domestic situation, right? But
and that's a tough question to answer, just because you have to read the signs, what people say or don't say, how people act or don't act. So you have to read body language and read through the lines of conversation to see where their mindset is. So I'll give you an example. I had a friend that we didn't know. It's a group of us. We didn't know that she was in a domestic violence situation until it blew up, and we was like, oh my gosh, how did we miss that? And we speak to her on a regular basis, and we go out and we do this. How did we miss that? And so I started going back from myself and my interactions with her, and figuring out what she said or what she didn't say when we were in conversations. So it was more of a, hey girl, what's up? How you been? Oh, I'm good. What you do this weekend? Well, we went here and here and here, and we did this, that, and the other, but it was never her and the partner. It was like her and the kids, even though that she lived with the partner. But we don't want to be nosy, I guess, and be like, well, where's so and so? How come you never mentioned so and so? And how are you able to travel and do all of this stuff? And girl, we know what you make, so you don't make that much to be over in all these countries and doing all of that. But who am I to ask? Who that's not my situation. And turns out, like, he was the financial supporter for the family. So she never really talked about that type of stuff. She always directed the question to somebody else. And looking back, like, me and my other friends, we were talking about that, like, oh my gosh, little things like that you're just not really paying attention to, that you think everything is okay, but you kind of got a feeling that something not right, but you didn't know what it was. Things like that is what you can use to dive into questions and relationships a little bit more, especially if it's people that you love and care for. Because I mean, that situation could have turned out really bad. And sometimes those domestic situations turn into a murder suicide, and that could have possibly been her. And I don't want that to happen to anybody I know or anybody that I teach. So I immediately reached out after finding out about that situation and was like, girl, like, help me help you. And
Yeah.
that's something else. They have to want the help too. If they don't tell you what the issue is and you don't know what the underlying issue is, and you offer food or shelter and that's not what they need, then you and she needs money versus the food and the shelter. I mean, you got to be able to help where they need the help. So, in order to do that, they have to tell you, and they have to feel comfortable with you to let you know and break down the walls of conversation to let you know, like, this is what happened, this is where I am, this is what I need to help me get out of the situation. So that's been tough. Looking at it from that perspective and just trying to figure out what is it that I could have done as a friend, especially somebody that's in this field. How did I miss those signs? So, yeah, I kind of beat myself up over that when I was talking to my husband about it, and he was like, you just never know. People cover things up. And again, it wasn't always physical because I was like, she never had a black eye and she never blah, blah, blah. So it's not always in that manner.
Because a lot of times two things happen. Okay. And I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. One, it's a shameful thing. And so pride kicks in, and you're not gonna just be like, oh girl, he doing this to me, because on one end of it, you still really care for this person. And so you are protective of that situation and the relationship. And then also, a lot of times before it becomes physical, it is emotional and mental. So they're breaking you down. They're breaking you down mentally so that by the time it does turn to something physical, you don't have the mental capacity or defense to really recognize where you are. It's almost, a very sly and, stealthy way that people will lure you in so deep. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute. They'll start off, I like to say like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like somebody will start off and they're so nice, and then they're so nice to your friends and your family, and everybody's like, oh, girl, you got a good one,
Yep. Yeah, make you think it's your fault and all of that by the
Yes.
time it's done. And you're like, how? How did that happen?
Me. Yes. How did I get here? What happened? What switch just automatically flipped? It'll be one small thing you do, and then all of a sudden it just, so I do empathize with the women that you serve. And I really did want to bring this out because I feel like it's not talked about enough. Mm-hmm. And I also feel like the onus is always put on the woman. And it's not really, we don't hear people shaming men for abusing women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We always say, oh, we have to teach our girls how to dress and how not to do this. And it's like, no, you need to teach your little boy to keep his hands to himself and self-respect.
Yep. It's always that way. And it's so unfortunate that is the norm. That is just the way that it is. It's okay for men to violate women and to, push themselves on, or whatever the case. And it's just really sad that it comes down to it being the onus being on the woman and never really being on the man. So just going to the money aspect, and we're both entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. That's why we're here, talking about your business and everything too. How do you? What's the question? How do I frame this in a way that? How do you see the disparity in finances playing into this thing?
So that's a good question, because I don't always dive into personal business with women. It's just from growing up where I grew up and having the family members that I have, I know that finances are an issue when you are in a situation like that. So I know that we just, like we just discussed, Sometimes women don't want to ask for help. Sometimes women don't want to broadcast what their real issue is. So if you just make it readily available and just give it to them, like, hey, like in a portion of my class, we do a PowerPoint first where we talk about mindset before we do the hands-on portion. Because again, if you can't do it in your mind, you're not going to do it physically. And I'm not just here just to teach you hands-on and that's it. So a portion of the class is dedicated to that, where I'm giving you the resources anyway, just in case. Because I haven't had a woman come to me and say, these are my financial concerns, these are my financial needs. But if I am presenting it in a way that it is going to everybody that's present in the class, and you're walking away with a worksheet or a phone number or address or a contact of somebody at a facility or at a banking center or something that can help you get your own bank account, that can help you get a telephone in your name, those sorts of things, then I know that it's worth it. So I know that, okay, she may not have come to me directly and said, these are my financial concerns of being in a domestic violence situation. But if they're saying, can you leave that number up there for a little while longer? She needs that help. So for me, it's just making sure that it's readily available for them to use when they need it, not for me to push on them or not necessarily wait for them to come to me, but when they need it, it's there.
Gotcha. Okay. So in a situation where perhaps, a woman is not in a abusive situation, she just, she's just living life. How do you, I guess, I don't want to say convince, but how do you make us aware that this could be something that we need to partake in to, to protect ourselves? Because I mean, like I said, I'm single. I move around a lot by myself and I'm always on alert. I think that's a woman thing. Like if you're by yourself, you're married. So I'm sure, if you're with your husband, your guard is down a little bit. But anytime that you're not, it's always a thing like, okay, do I have my keys in my hand? Am I, hearing what's going on? I'm hearing everything, around me, trying to make sure nobody's following me, make it, all that stuff that is really mental baggage that comes along. I hate parking garages. Hate them. I hate parking garages, and I have a parking garage where I live. So at nighttime, I'm like, oh, here we go. Like I'm gearing up, right? Like, oh, let's get it together. Because somebody comes out from one of these corners, I gotta be ready, So.
But that's good. That's really good. So let me tell you why that's good. That's good because you're playing scenarios in your head. You're what ifing. So what if you have a plan? Sometimes women never what if and don't have a plan, and that's when they freeze. So if you're what ifing and saying, I'm a left punch, right punch, or I'm gonna do something, I'm kick him in his face. I don't know, but I'm gonna do something. As long as you have a plan, you're good to go. So most people never make it that far. They never think about what if. And the easiest way for me to, I'm just going to use the word convince everyday women that they do need a self-defense class is common scenarios like that. I'll pull up paper things from the newspaper or like Yahoo or something that shows an everyday situation gone wrong. So if it's a woman that was grocery shopping with her kids and she's putting her kids in the car and somebody comes from behind, puts a hand over the mouth, and now it's kidnapping her. Wow. And it's something that you just don't think about. It's like, nah, I live over here in this suburb city. That'll never happen. I'm good to go. We're safe. And no ma'am. And then I pull up different scenarios of women that have been in hotel rooms that do solo travel. And you don't know who these hotels are hiring, child. So one of my favorite tips is to travel with a rubber doorstop. Because we think a door stops to keep doors open when we can use door stops to keep doors closed, especially for a hotel room where the door opens inward towards you. So if you have a door stop on your side, and somebody is using their key, their all access key to get in your room, the door is gonna jam on that doorstop. So them pushing hard enough is gonna wake you up to be like, something's going on, something ain't right. So then you can go to that stun gun, that knife, that pepper spray, that gun, whatever you have to be able to defend yourself in that situation. But a lot of women travel solo for work, or this it's just become a big thing for women to travel in general by themselves, across the nation, across the world. So we need to be able to show, or I have to be able to show that everyday women, you're still vulnerable. This can still happen to you. So little things like that, just showing that it's an everyday situation that you think was normal, just gone wrong.
I'm telling you, my mind, I don't know, like part of me is like, okay, Chanel, stop being so paranoid. But I'm glad that you said like you're already on alert, so you already got a plan. I'm telling you, I have exit strategies. I know how to get out of places. Like it's
So
just how I'm wired. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Like when I park certain places, I'm like, okay, I need to park here so that my car had like I'll park on the little curb. You know how to have the curb in the middle of the parking lot of the street. I park right there so that I'm not between cars. Like all that is going on in my mind.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm like, okay, Chanel, you tripping. But not hearing you say that, I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit better because I am trying to keep myself safe.
That's really good. But also, I'll tell you this story. I worked this as a police officer. I had a call where I went to and I had to do a report where a lady was sexually assaulted in her home overnight. Catch this, by the guy who fixed her toilet.
Oh, Jesus. See?
Yes. And so what happened was the guy came in through the window of her bathroom. So he was in her bathroom fixing the toilet, but unlocked the window. Yes, ma'am. So he came back that night through that window, and she woke up with him on top of her.
Oh, Jesus. See what I'm saying?
For her, that window did not have an alarm on it. So she didn't hear nothing of him coming in. She just woke up with with him on top of her. Yes. Yes. So what what's the lesson to be learned from that? Either you're present while these people are in your home working on the cable and the plumbing and all of that, or you make sure you go back behind them and make sure your doors and windows are locked. That's something that we just wouldn't think about. Who would think that the dang plumber is gonna come through the window and rape me? And what?
Like really? That is I would never think of stuff like that. Now that's one I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah.
I think of a lot of stuff, but that's one I wouldn't it wouldn't have got me. He would have won me that day because I wouldn't have, that's not something I would have thought. I mean, just seriously.
You'd have what if that one?
He would have won with that one with me because I wouldn't have thought of that at all. Because sometimes we look at life and people's behavior based upon what we would do. Right?
We do.
I wouldn't do. Who would do that? You hear that all the time. Who would do something like that? Somebody.
Yeah. Another thing that I would say is make sure that when you look around your home, have you seen the movie Enough with J-Lo?
Yes.
Okay, so you remember the part of the movie where she was in old dude's home and she was putting things within reach, and she was doing all of this type of stuff to make sure that if she fell, she wouldn't hit her head on the table, or this drawer had a gun in it, or over here was a knife, or whatever. Okay, we have to do that at home too. So by your door, make sure that you have something that you can use as a weapon if you're coming in or going out and the perpetrator is coming in or trying to go out, that you can hit them with. So if it's like a stiletto, so you keep a pair of shoes because that looks normal by the door, right? So you have stilettos there that you can use the heel as a weapon. Or if your back door is near a fireplace and you can use the utensils from the fireplace, keep that on the side where the door is so you can have easy access to it. Girl, I got a sorority sister who keeps a knife in her couch. Honey, I was sitting on the couch, did this, readjust myself, and was like, whoa, ma'am. And she was like, oh, you told me that I need to have weapons throughout the house. Can you remove that when you get company, please?
That's funny. I have a friend who's also a sorority sister, and she was telling me about her dad. Now that not a woman, but of course, she was talking about how her dad had like guns and weapons all over, like throughout the house. So he might be, like you said, on the couch. He might be sitting at the dining room table, and he could like reach over and grab something. Like all these different hideaway. I think she said he had about 8 different guns in the house, like stored away in different places and stuff. I was like, well, wasn't nobody coming in there on him?
Girl, that's funny. Well, my mom, she keeps a bat in the trunk. And I was putting something in the car for her one day, and I was like, Mama, what is this bat doing? Like it's right there in the trunk. She was like, oh, because if I'm putting groceries in the car and somebody come from, I can see the shadow. I'm used to that bat and pop. Yes, ma'am.
I used to keep a bat in my trunk too. I don't have it anymore, but I did. I do have a big umbrella, one of those big like golf size umbrellas.
Yeah. They do some damage too.
Yeah. So now I'm interested, right? Okay. This is just how, like, now you gonna have me in here like booby trapping my house or something. Booby trapping my whole house. What are some other things that you can, just simple things that women can do to protect themselves? Because I watch us so many times, especially now that we're walking down the street with these phones in our hands like this.
Girl. So if we have all of this little stuff in our ears and everything, we need to make sure that only one is in. So you can still listen to your music, be in your phone or whatever, but just have one in so you can hear what's going on the outside. If you are needing to go to an ATM machine, go to an ATM machine that's inside of a store. So that's inside of like a grocery store or something, instead of the ones at the banking center where you have to drive up or get out of your car to go to. I mean, a grocery store, you got people around and they have a camera system. So that's a better bet going inside of a Walmart at 11 p.m. than going to a Wells Fargo at 11 p.m. So that's that. I will also say, let's see, your GPS. So if you use your GPS inside of your car, and you know how you have like the 1, 2, and 3, people have it set for their garage and different things. If your navigation system is set to home, make sure it's not your home address. Make sure it's a location that you know how to get home from. Because you don't want somebody to steal your car, and now they push home, and now they going to your home, and they make it to your home, and they push 1, and now they got access to your house.
Yep. Now I've done that. Like I put somewhere, and I'm like, all right, I know how to get home from here. Yes. But you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yes. So those are a couple of my favorites: is to travel with a doorstop and then a rubber doorstop. And make sure they're different sizes. You go to a dollar store, you get a doorstop in different sizes and come out with $5 to be good. So, because you never know the height of the door. And not just traveling, but you can also, I got it from a teacher, but so you can also put it in your kid's backpack and let them know, because sometimes, well, I don't know, it's 2021 and laws have changed in Texas, but sometimes teachers may not have weapons in their classrooms if there is an active shooter situation. So you want to make sure that your child knows, I can pull this rubber doorstop out of my backpack, and if the door opens inward in that classroom, it's going to prevent somebody from having immediate access to them. They may have to work a little bit harder and give them some time to figure out what to do, but it won't be as immediate and so much damage and harm in the classroom. So those are a few of my favorites. Just travel in packs. Don't travel by yourself. I have this neck purse that I use. I don't have it on right now, but it's like a little string, and it's a little patch about this big that you can put up under your shirt. I use that all the time for the holiday season instead of carrying a purse, because it fits my driver's license and my Carmex and my money inside of it. And I don't have to worry about somebody, trying to take my crossbody off of me, or trying to take my purse off my shoulder or my backpack off my back. because now I'm vulnerable if you're pulling me back when I have a backpack on and I'm going in this direction because I can't get it off. So it's easier to have some type of neck purse that you can carry around your neck and have all your information there, instead of, in a regular size purse. So
that's good. That's good. This is good stuff. I'm gonna tell you one. I never would have thought of the doorstop. I used to be a flight attendant, so I mean, I was in the room in random hotel rooms all the
yes,
time,
all the time.
every day. I slept in a different hotel room, and so just to know that, that would have been priceless for me. Because I never even thought of that or considered that.
And you
And that
can
was
sleep a little bit better when you're in a place like that, knowing that you have some type of security, because you
yeah,
can't always carry pepper spray on the plane, or depending on where you're going. Every state has a different law when it comes to pepper spray and stun guns. So you have to think outside of the box. But a rubber doorstop, you carry that anywhere.
yeah. I've had to surrender pepper spray, and I had I had a flashlight with like sharp edges on it
Oh
where I could
man.
like stab and
Yep.
twist.
Yep.
I had to surrender that at the airport. Just little things that I would travel with, to try to be all
Protect.
right when I was out. But I had to surrender quite a few of my things and then turn around and try to buy some other ones. So I'm gonna be coming to you to buy some more little toys, because I'm down to like 3 right now. And like I said, I use them for different things. Some I keep in
Yeah.
my purse. Some if I'm out, I have some little some on my hands,
Yep.
whatever. Um,
Yep.
so yeah. So what kind of tell us about that before we wrap up. What kind of little self-defense tools do you have?
Okay. So my favorite thing to use, not just because I'm a Zeta girl, but we have these little cat. It's a cat eyes, and the point is the cat ears. They also have it as a dog, but it's a keychain that you can use, and it's almost like brass knuckles that you can put on your keychain and protect yourself. The old school version of that was putting your key in between your fingers and
Yeah.
closing. So now you have a keychain where you can just put your fingers through the eyes of it, and you can walk and feel protected that way, even if you're running or something like that. Because it may not be as easy to keep your key if you're working out or something in your hand. So I have those types of keychains, and then I have stun guns. And with the stun guns, it's protective for you, because there's a pin. If the pin is not attached to the stun gun won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little latch that goes around your wrist, and the pin goes inside the stun gun. So you're holding it and you're using it against somebody. And then if they snatch it out of your hand and it comes detached from that pin, they can't turn around and use it on you. But it's also a 3-in-1, because it's a stun gun, it's a flashlight, and it's a personal alarm. So if the pin is attached or not attached, the flashlight and the alarm will still work. So that's really good. And then you have the pepper spray, of course. In my classes, we practice pepper spraying the dummy, because, girl, you'll be amazed at how many
People
people
pepper
think
spray
that,
themselves.
yeah.
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 So they spray themselves because they're not opening it the right way, or they think they're spraying the assailant and they're not. They're missing. They're coming down here or something. And it's like, if anything, come up here so it can drip into their eyes and be effective that way. But pepper spray, make sure it has the highest SCOs, which means the highest number of burn of the cayenne of the pepper that's inside. So you want it to be extremely effective that way. The brands that I recommend for pepper spray would be Mace and Streetwise, because I know for sure that those have a high number of pepper in it to be effective. And then I have knives. Some people like knives and feel comfortable with using knives. That's cool. I keep 2 knives in my purse, honey. And one of them is about this big, so I can keep it in any of my pockets. And then the other one is about this big, because it has a seatbelt cutter and a window glass breaker on it. So the seatbelt cutter, if you're in a situation where somebody has kidnapped you and they've been safe enough to put on your seatbelt, child, you can cut that seatbelt and get out of there. Or if you're in an accident and you're pinned down and you need to get out of the car, you can use the seatbelt cutter to be able to get out of the seatbelt. And then the window breaker, it has just a slight point on the end that's good enough to break a window. So if you tap a window, you ain't even got to go like boom, boom. No, you don't even have to do it that hard. If you tap a window in the middle or in the corners with that window breaker, the window will shatter. And it shatters most of the times that I've practiced it. The times that I've used it, the glass shattered like on the sticky itself, so it wasn't like glass was falling in the car or falling everywhere. It broke on that sheet to where the whole thing fell out.
Okay.
So I don't know if that'll always work, but with my experience, that has been the positive experience of breaking a window. Because I'll tell you this real quick, I had to use that to get a baby out of a car seat, and so that was our concern was,
is this yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to break the glass and then it shatters on the baby in the car seat. Like, how are we supposed to? And so we had to take that chance and broke it from the other side and had to go in through the window to reach to get the baby, pull the baby out through that window. But knowing that it didn't shatter, I was like, oh, okay. I wonder if that'll happen again. And then it did happen again where I had to use it and it didn't shatter. And I was like, oh.
All right. Well, I'm telling you, I'm coming to get me some of them little tools because I stay on high alert. I watch too much IDTV and all of that.
Yes, honey. Yes, me too.
So I'm like, no, you're not gonna get me today. You're not gonna get me today. So thank you so much. Tell us how we can, purchase some of your things. What's your website? How can we find you? Things like that.
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram and on Facebook at Foxy Defense Pro. So FOXYDEFENSEPRO on both of those. And then my website is foxydefensepro.com. So you can buy all of those items that we just talked about, the pepper spray, the stun gun, the knives, door stops, the keychains. I have all that on the website. And then you can actually sign up for a self-defense class. So I have them once a month. And the next one is in October. So it's October 16th and it's in Richland Hills. And then the one in November is it's also in Richland Hills. It's November 21st. And then December. So you have them once a month and they're all in the same location. So you can go to my website and sign up that way for a class, or you can sign up on the website for the actual location where it's at. It's called the Link Rec Center. So in Richland Hills, you can sign up there. So I hope to see some of you guys in the next self-defense class so you can learn how to be prepared and not scared.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Demetra, for joining us today. I've learned a lot. If nothing else, I'm going to get me a doggone doorstop, honey. Actually, I'm probably get two. So I'll barricade myself somewhere.
That's right.
With me. And I love the fact that you said that about the schools too. I really want to highlight that before we end about, because we didn't have active shooter drills in school. We had fire drills and tornado drills. That was it.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
So just to think about how these kids are adjusting to that, how teachers have to try to protect all these babies and stuff like that. I just think it's sad. But I like the fact that you brought up that doorstop idea. So that can be used for anybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate it.
All right. Well, y'all, it's been another week of the Bright Girls in Business podcast. As always, we love to bring you phenomenal women entrepreneurs who are doing great things, not only in our community and in our world, but just in their industries. And so we'll be back next week with an extraordinary woman entrepreneur. I need y'all to make sure that you mark your calendars, mark your clocks, your alarms, whatever you need to do for 6 p.m. Central next Monday. We'll be back. And until next time, y'all stay safe, y'all stay blessed, and y'all stay successful.